Morning. We're waiting to get picked up and go on the Escobar tour. Really excited. We're going to see his mansion and his walk-in... Sorry, some noise. Our street's tiny, but for some reason it's very busy. But anyway, so we're going to see his mansion, I believe the prison that he built, and obviously where he was assassinated. So really excited about this. It's going to be a 5-hour tour versus a 3-hour. Dumb reference, sorry. But we're excited. It's going to be fun. And then in the afternoon, we may go hit a museum or two. Or just walk around this wonderful city. See you soon. Instead of our typical pictures and words format, I'm going to do a voiceover, talk about the different things you're going to see, because there's a lot of detail. The information is really interesting. This is our van, who's driven by our tour guide, and he played a video detailing information about how the narcos got started and Pablo Escobar himself. This is one of the 500 houses Escobar owned. It had 8 floors, one just for him and his family, 1 floor for just his guards, 1 with a party room, 1 for his mother. But he only lived there for 8 months because it was bombed by the Cali cartel right in the street we were standing on taking this picture. This is what started a war between the two factions for some time before they settled on things. In the backyard, there's still the remnants of a destroyed satellite dish. It was just a red squirrel on it, which I thought was cute, but they basically left this place as is after it was bombed. There's some graffiti in the back, which you're seeing here, commemorating Pablo. And right now, the government owns the building, and they don't let anybody in. And despite the fact that there's a guard shack in the front, it's completely ransacked. People went through it, tearing up the walls and all that stuff, trying to find his money and his drugs and weapons and stuff. So this place has a special meaning in the drug war. This is where the sicarios would come to pray. The statue in the center who they would pray to is La Virgen de la Rosa Mística, or the Virgin of the Mystic Rose. They would come here, pray, but in a trade sense. They would offer her money in return for protecting, say, a drug shipment, or that an assassination would be completed. It's an outdoor temple, and you'll see in a second an image of her up close. There were some people praying up there, so I didn't want to go up and bother them. But the floor is covered in these tiles that thank her for the blessings. They don't say exactly what they are thanking her for in terms of what specific blessing, which is interesting, but they definitely all thank her, and it's all over the place on the walls. You can see them right there going up that slope. They're on the trees where some of the people were sitting, and even where we were standing. It was really, really cool. The guide even called it somewhat a form of street art. But it just has an interesting meaning because the sicarios, these are guys that are going around assassinating people, were deeply religious, so they would come here all the time. There's even a story where a woman was praying for money for food, and a sicario was kneeling next to her, got up, handed her 300,000 pesos, and told her to leave because he wanted to make sure that the Virgen focused on him. And that's her right there in the center. Just more shots of the people praying, and they also have votive candles that even some people were holding as they were sitting there while we were visiting. It's a really cool place. I wish we could have stayed a little longer, maybe even heard a mass or something, but we ended up having to move on to the next stop. And the next stop was the cemetery in which Pablo Escobar was buried. It has a beautiful view of the city and the surrounding mountains. This is an interesting spot given what Pablo Escobar's funeral looked like, which you'll see right now. Wasn't that video insane? And that was just 37 seconds of a 4-minute video. It was very disturbing to watch. This is our guide, Nicholas, walking us around the cemetery. He's going to show us to a specific grave before taking us to Pablo's grave. This is the grave of Griselda Blanco de Trujillo. If Pablo Escobar is the king of cocaine, she is the queen. The biggest difference between the two of them is that she actually killed people herself with her own two hands versus Pablo, who would always get people to do it for him. And her visage matched her callous soul. Here she is in all her barbaric glory. Quite the looker, right? Not surprising a woman who looked like that would be so vicious. Just an absolutely terrible person. The reason our guide pointed her out was he wanted to remind us that Pablo Escobar was just one of many people who were part of this narco cartel. This right here that you're looking at is a cartoon published by a newspaper showing all these different faces, but only Pablo is the one you recognize, showing that he was the person who was, while the face, not the only one running things, and there were people even lesser known than him that were way more powerful. Here we are walking to his grave. It has the prime spot in the cemetery, of course, right next to the church. And his family is also buried with him on this plot that's actually supported by a trust fund. This is the grave plot with some of his family members who are buried with him. That guy in the hat is the one who takes care of it, and it's that whole white and black area for his grave. This is the gravestone for Gustavo, Pablo's cousin, who was basically the guy in charge of all the money and probably had more power than Pablo himself. He died about 3 years prior to Pablo. And there's his tombstone, the great drug kingpin. It's very simple. It's been changed over the years as people either vandalized it or even try to steal it, but that's its current incarnation. And supposedly his grave is the second most visited in Latin America behind Evita. Not sure if that's true, but given his popularity, it might be. This is interesting because it's a wanted poster for Escobar and his partner, the Mexican. It offers 100,000 pesos to anyone who helps bring him in. The interesting part is that Escobar put out his own poster telling people that if they knew something but didn't talk, he would actually pay them more than what they would have received from the government. This picture is crazy because it's Pablo Escobar and his son in front of the White House. We saw several where he was also in Las Vegas and a couple of other places partying up as if he was the number one showman. This is Pablo's citizenship card. He had some differences from Wagner Moura, who played him. He's not as tall, and he was actually quite fat. And this is where it all went down. This is the place where Pablo was killed by the Colombian police, at least that's what we think. It's different from the original look. It's obviously been modified. The house has 3 floors, when in the original it only had 2. Another thing that the narco show does is it makes it look like he ran out the side of the building, when in reality the shootout actually happened in the back. This next picture right here you'll see is what it originally looked like. As you can see, it's only 2 floors, and now is actually a Spanish school. And this is where it actually all went down. The back of the building, where Pablo and Limon ran out onto that roof and were shot and killed. The actual filming didn't take place here. It actually took place 2 doors down, but they did a good job of recreating it. That's a close-up of the actual window that's all boarded up with cinder blocks now that he escaped through. Here is an image of the actual assassination. You can see his body and the cops celebrating over it, which our guide believes to be a lot of propaganda. There is a prevailing theory that Pablo actually killed himself because one of his bullet wounds was in one of his ears that then went out through the other. And he was only hit 3 times in total, so with all the cops there shooting at him, how come he only got hit 3 times, whereas Limon got hit 14? Some people believe that maybe the Cali cartel or some of the other enemy cartels got to him as well, and the cops just took all the glory. Propaganda being what it is. We'll never know the truth. It is what it is at this point, but it was very interesting to see this and learn more about the guy. Basically, he didn't build all those schools and hospitals that people talked about. The locals really think of him as a terrorist. He was a bad person because a lot of people that were victims of his wars were the public, not just the politicians or any of his other drug enemies. So it's a touchy subject. Our guide said to proceed with caution if you're going to ask any locals about it, because it is kind of a sore subject, and there was a lot of victims that fell because of these narco traffickers. It was pretty interesting and eye-opening. Glad we went on it and learned a lot. And I'll leave you with the inscription that Pablo wanted on his original grave, and we'll see you tomorrow in tomorrow's vlog.